All right, Krishna, everyone. This is the acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today I'm going to be sharing with you one of my favorite stories from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, or sometimes called the Bhagavat Purana, and this is called the story of Pingala. And it is a story that Lord Krishna tells to Uddhava, who's something like a student to Krishna, also a dear friend, devotee, a little bit like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna is telling him a story in turn about an Avaduta Brahmana, who's sort of like a wandering spiritual monk, who is giving instructions to someone named Maharaj Yadu. And so in this story, the Avaduta Brahmana tells Maharaj Yadu about the instructions that he received from 9 of his gurus. And all of these gurus come from the natural world, which I think is really neat. So it's a way of reminding us that that there is the figure of the guru in the Indian tradition, a teacher that stands in as a representative of God, and that is part of what we worship, revere, serve, and who we learn from. And these, of course, the guru has a very, it's a complicated relationship in the West, because we have oftentimes gurus that have come from India, or there's been a way in which we, yoga has become part of our capitalist society. There's a whole industry built around yoga, and so, gurus have sometimes been exposed as frauds and worse. In similar ways, we deal with this in the figure of priests in the church and other religious traditions in the world. But ideally, the guru serves as an elevated, like Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama. We have great examples of monks in our world who are gurus to people. And our Srila Prabhupada in the Bhakti Yoga tradition was that. And I consider myself very fortunate to have a guru myself and other instructing gurus in my life who are, really pure, good examples of someone walking the path with integrity, and not big fame and entourages and things like that. Pretty humble people. So at any rate, in this story, we're seeing gurus from nature, from the natural world, speak and offer this Avaduta Brahmana some insight about the spiritual path. So I thought this is kind of a cool story I wanted to share. I'm sharing it in summary form. It comes from the 11th canto and the 8th chapter. So you can check it out yourself if you want to pick up a copy of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. It's very long and very dense, but you can also read it online. There's a great app called Vedabase, and you can read a lot of different Vedic scriptures from that app. Anyway, so first of all, we start with the Python. And the first instruction that the Avaduta Brahmana receives is that one who watches the python recognizes that the python sometimes goes very long periods of time without eating, but then eventually food comes, and when food comes, sometimes there's a lot of it, and then other times for a very long time the python won't eat. But the python is not like other types of predators that are always on the hunt, exerting a lot of energy. The python is, I guess, lazy is one word for it, but the python lays in wait. So it lies in wait. So the instruction the Avaduta Brahmana receives from the python is to cultivate a mentality of detachment, taking whatever comes of its own accord. Now, the next one is from the ocean. The Avaduta Brahmana notices that the rivers are always pouring into the ocean, yet the ocean remains level. It doesn't, you look at the ocean, it doesn't like greatly rise or greatly fall. Similarly, when the riverbeds dry up and the rivers are no longer feeding the ocean does not sink or fall, lose its level. So it doesn't rise when the rivers are pouring in, and when the rivers dry up in the dry season, it does not lose anything either. So in this way, the sage doesn't become elated when he or she achieves desirable things, nor does he or she become distressed in their absence. The next one is the moth, who will rush toward the fire. We have to be very careful about our desires, especially lust. When we are drawn toward the fire of something that we desire very intensely, especially sexual things, that we're like moths to the flame. And so he learns this important lesson from the moth about lust. Then he talks about the bees, the 2 kinds of bees, the bumblebee and the honeybee. The honeybee goes from place to place getting food. And so he recognizes, the honeybee does, that there are naturally being provided for from a lot of different places. And the message there is not to hoard up, because there's always a multiplicity of resources coming in. And then the other one is also that the honeybee also, the bumblebee and the honeybee, and the honeybee also doesn't hoard things. So be careful not to hoard things because things can get destroyed when you hoard things. That's a lesson related to the honeybee. And then the bumblebee is also about small amounts of collecting small amounts of food from various places. And also he says that a sage should collect the essential truths from a variety of different scriptures, from all of the different scriptures, be they great or insignificant. Collect them like the honeybee. Now, that's a great message, not to hoard and to collect the essence of things and to trust that things will come in from a variety of different places to provide for us. The Avadhuta Brahmana talks about the elephant. The male elephants are tricked by hunters in India into moving forward into a cage because there's a female elephant in there that they want to mate with. And this message here is to be careful about what we are attracted to and the form of it, because it's often not what it appears to be. And so we can get trapped by things that we think are really going to fulfill us or be really attractive, but then they end up encaging us. Now, you can take that out of the male-female dynamic and just universalize it and just say, look, like, it's not just any form. Like, if you think, oh, well, I'm going to go do this because it's going to be exactly like this. And then you get into something, you invest a lot of time, energy, money, resources, and you realize this is not what I thought it was. And then you're trapped in and obligated by something that you weren't thinking clearly about in the beginning. So we have to be very careful about expectations and the ideals that we project onto things and so forth. Now, the honey thief is an interesting one. So this is a monk who's wandering around and just trusting that things will come his way. And what he notices is that the honey thief steals the honey that's collected with great effort by the honey bee. So a person in the renounced order of life, he says, has the privilege of enjoying the food that lots of people have worked really hard for. They're busy, like working. And the enlightened sage is one who recognizes that, that they will benefit from the things that are being laid out by all these people that are working very hard. If you ever think about the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh or even my own guru's guru, Srila Prabhupada, he came to the United States with like 50 cents, something ridiculous, like $5, or it was really very little money, and he got here and didn't have anything. And he ended up building a global network of temples all over the world for Bhakti Yoga. So the resources come to us. And we don't have to buy into the myth that to have something we need to break our back, because there's a weird way in which things naturally come to us of our own accord. There's always honeybees collecting honey. And in some ways, spiritual life is a little bit like being a honey thief. Just think of all the saintly people in the world who have not been so interested in the world, and yet all these resources end up coming to them from people who are, working like honeybees. So there's an interesting teaching about that for people in spiritual life. The instruction of the deer is that the deer hears the hunter's flute and is entranced by it. And the message of the deer is to be very careful by what we allow to come into our ears and capture us through sound vibration, because there's a lot of things out there that will capture and lure us into and entangle us in very difficult karmic circumstances, because we're entranced like the deer is to the flute of the hunter that lures it in. The fish, similarly, the fish is captured by its sense of taste and may be caught on a baited fish hook and will die. Similarly, someone who is victimized by their mouth, by what they say or by what they need to taste, can easily come onto the hook and get into trouble. And then finally, at the end, he tells the story of a prostitute named Pingala. And this prostitute is up in the street one night, and she's very beautifully dressed, and she's wearing attractive clothing and ornaments, and is waiting from sunset until midnight for a customer. She waits in great anticipation, and then she becomes really agitated and upset and frustrated and goes home. And then when she gets home, she renounces it. She's like, "This is exhausting. I don't like this at all." And she turns to prayer. And this is a critical turning point. And he said, we're actually in observing this prostitute in a city, this wandering sage said, we're all like this person. We're all in a similar position where we are doing our best to look good and be the right thing and, receive some reward from the world. Whether that's, if you're a business owner, that's business, or if you want someone to validate you because you're beautiful, or whatever the case might be. But we're all like that, where we're all doing our best, presenting our best, and hoping to get a reward, a result, something that we need or want to feel validated or to feel wealthy or whatever the case might be again. And but it doesn't come. It doesn't come. And so then by the end, we should all be like this prostitute that he sees in the city, who in her frustration goes home and just says, screw this, I'm going to become a nun. That's a really interesting story. So if you're an astrologer, that story is an old archetypal story that actually you can see a lot of the presence of those particular dichotomies around in our archetypal psychology, what's sometimes called the virgin and the prostitute, or the virgin and the whore dichotomy that exists in all people, that we're working with. And part of the Virgo Pisces axis in astrology is actually about addressing some of those issues. Anyway, beautiful stories and really interesting allegories. And so I love that. I love that the teachings of the guru come through these things that he observes in the world, from people to animals and situations. Hope that you enjoyed it too. I would love to hear if any of these gurus that he sees in the world speak to you, all the different 9 gurus, and also where you've met a guru in an unlikely place. We have our gurus in the human body form, and if we're really listening, I think that God often speaks to us in many other forms, things that we observe in nature that teach us something about how to be. So at any rate, I hope you're doing well, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Hare Krishna.